Hi and welcome back. This is Milton Shupe, and this is the series Gmax 1.2 for the beginning modeler, video number 45. The focus of which for this video is Build Virtual Cockpit Part 6, the mini-series. Our objective here in the Virtual Cockpit is to discuss some of the newly added items since the previous video, and then we're going to prepare the vcpanel to receive gauges. So that's what it's all about. So first, let's talk about these things here on the left side of the cockpit. I've added since the last video, and the reason I didn't take the time to build these in the video is all of these items are simple to construct, starting with the standard primitives, boxes, and cylinders, and I think I may have used sphere, yes, there. So I didn't see a need to disrespect your time in that regard. So, but I will talk about what we added here. Simply, in the electrical box, we added switches and knobs, some of which are animated, and we added the gear lever that retracts or extends the gear. We added the flap lever, which will deploy the flaps or not, and we added 3 trim tab controls for the elevator, rudder, and ailerons, and we added a wobble pump. Those are the additions, and not much to say here other than these standard controls that are found in all cockpits. May not look this way, but you have gear flaps and trim controls in all cockpits. So essentially very simple to add, set the pivots, animate 0 to 100, and you're good to go. It's just pretty simple, and you see a lot of variations of these things. Sometimes just the simplest of levers that are used, sticking out of a control box of some sort, but very easy to use, very easy to do. So I didn't want to waste your time doing those things. These, as long as you get the names right on these 5, 6 things, and do the animation 0 to 100, you're good to go. You're cooking with gas. So not a big deal. So, and if you don't have the SDK, I recommend that you get it. Let me pull one up here. Pull up the one I've got here. In the section we're looking at is keyframe animation names for interior parts. So you need a cockpit name. Then we want to drop down to this section, which is the mouse is jumping here. Interior parts, and you'll see switches and levers primarily is what you're going to see here. And here's the lever flap we use. Take note of the name, the official animation name. If you don't name it that, the export won't recognize it as such, and it will not be animated for you. And here are the keyframes that you animate on. Key 0 is no deflection, which means as you are in flight, wings or the flaps are retracted. And keyframe 100 is max deflection, so whatever that is for your flaps, 45 degrees, 40, what have you, that's what you'd have at keyframe 100. As the next one down is landing gear lever, and this is the official animation name that is recognized on export. And basically, from when we animated the gear, keyframe 0 is gear up and keyframe 100 is gear down. So that's pretty simple. You'll see switches back on the electrical panel, and most of what is down there, well, half of which anyhow, are light switches. So you'll see that just about all the switches, especially for lights, are animated 0 to 50. There's a recognition light, 0 to 50. And on occasion, some things you'll see animated 0, 25, 50, where 25 is the neutral point or center point. But generally, it's 0 to 50. Here we go. Here's a magneto switches 0, 25, and 50. Oh, it also has a 75. Yeah, I remember using that once. Okay, so the other thing is, if you see in this list where it states an axis, then you must use that axis. For example, this is a good one, trim tab elevator, animated on the x-axis. So that's the way you've got to do it. And if I could find easily, and sometimes it seems hard to find these things, I would show you that the rudder trim tab is also axis driven, but not all of them are, and if not, you just set your pivot whichever way you want, line it up, doesn't matter about the axis, and it will work just fine. So that's it about the SDK. And by the way, even though I'm looking at this, the original SDK in Microsoft Word, they are available on the net in PDF form, and I placed a link down under this video where you can go to FS Developer and download the PDF form of the SDKs. So I highly recommend that you do that if you don't have a copy of them already. All right. So that's the world I added. Most of this stuff is functional. You can see the stuff that moves. So these trim tabs are animated by the sim, so they're not moving. But the switches, mainly lights, panel lights, landing lights, etc., etc. Down here we have generators and pitot heat, and this is a switch for the fuel pump. And I actually have a amp meter gauge displaying here in this circular object. Okay. Alright, so the second part of this video is going to focus on getting your panel ready for gauge display. Now, PlateSim will not display gauges just on any 3D object. You actually have to set up a planar and give it a special name, any name really, but it's got to be preceded with a $sign for it to be recognized for this purpose. So you can name these things anything, but it's got to be preceded by a $sign that says to FS, this is a gauge display item, and then you get your coordinates for this, because Gmax gets the coordinates for that, and that's where it will display the gauges that you identify for that object. All right, let's just hide everything except this and get started on what we're going to do here to get this object ready to display gauges. So the first thing we need to do is create a planar, and since this 2D panel or 3D panel is exactly the shape of our panel, we're simply going to select the polys across the front of here. Now, we only want these front polys. We can't have any 3D stuff going on a gauge planar. It has to be perfectly flat, otherwise you'll have ripping and tearing in your gauge display. So you can see that panel is perfectly flat. So we want the front, and if it's not, you can always go down before you copy it and make planar on it to ensure it's flat. Okay, well, that's might be a good thing to remember. So once we have those polys highlighted, we're going to copy that so we can make it planar just for the gauge display. And here we go. So we're going to press enter and copy this, and you can call it anything. I usually want to know what the object is when I'm looking through a list of objects, so we just call it VC planar, and I know that's where I just want to display my gauges. So, all right, so we can we have that selected now, and while we're right here, we may as well link it to its mommy. So there we go. So now we have it linked to its parent. So we can hide the parent and just get everything out of our way. Not that what we're going to do is all that complicated, but we don't need anything to... What am I doing? Oh, I got the panel selected. Well, I guess I just more time, undo. Guess I hit the wrong button. Oh, I linked it. I got the link backwards. So let's see, I got vcpanel. That's how I did that. Bust that link. I must have selected the planar. Okay, I got it. Alright, now link. Alright, let's see if we did it right this time. Planar to the panel. Got it. So now we can hide unselected. And next thing we're going to do is set the pivot, center the pivot, align the world, and just to be safe, reset the scale on it. Alright. I forgot to do one key thing before I hid that, so let's bring it back. We have to move this off the surface of, let's go into VC planar here. One of the key things you have to do, and it took me a little while to learn this because back when I started, there wasn't many people around that knew anything about anything. One of the things you have to do to allow your gauges to display properly is you got to move it off of the surface of the 3D panel you copied it from by 0.002 meters, 2 thousandths of a meter, and that also equates to 0.006 feet if you're working in decimal feet, or it equates to 0.078 inches. So just a little tidbit here. Okay, I'm going to get in local mode so I can talk about the y-axis here. We're going to move this back or away from the surface by 2.002 meters, and there I have it already. If you look at the y-axis, I've moved it minus 0.002 meters. So that is done. So with that done, now we can hide unselected. Now we're down to just our gauge display planar called VC planar. So what's next? Well, if I look over at my trusty cheat sheet, now that we've got the pivot aligned, we've moved the planar off the surface of the VC panel. Now we can map it. So we're going to go do a polish select. You'll have to do it this way. I have a cheat set up there. And we got all the polish selected there, so we're going to add a UVW map. I'll go down and do it the way you have to do it. And we're going to make sure we're aligned to world, because you can see that one's not. Now we got the green on this side, on the right side, the handle's at the top. We know we're aligned correctly. And we need to set this up so it's not so tight. So we're not fitting it. We're just going to give it some breathing space. And we're going to go 0.7 both ways. Now, most of the time you have gauges in other places in a cockpit besides on the main panel. You may have them on the left or right sides on an electrical panel or overhead panel, or you got your radios down on your consoles. Well, we have space here that we can map also to the same texture sheet. So it doesn't matter where the gauges are being displayed. I even have gauges out in the nose of some of my bombers that I put on the same sheet. So it doesn't matter where they are as long as you map them and apply this texture to it, and then export it and bring it all back together so you've got all these things laid out on one texture sheet. Okay, so we've got it mapped. What's next? We're going to export it. So we're going to export this over to Lithunwrap. Well, hang on a second. Export selected. And we're going to export it as a Quake 3. We're going to the desktop, and we're going here to MD3, the video section, and we're going to export it as a VCO1, $, VCO1, doesn't matter. It's what we save it as that matters. Alright, that's exported, so let's pull up, let me pull up Lithunwrap here, and we'll get this bad boy going. Lithunwrap, and we're going to model open, and we're going to pop up a level here and pick up VCO1, import that, and there you see the panel that we have mapped. So we're ready to save that. It looks good. So we're going to save this to our UVW folder in that same folder, and I've been here before, as you can see. We'll save over top of the original one. And we're going to make it a 1024. Now, in the panel folder, you're limited to 1536, but these can be any size, but can't be larger than 1536 the way they're mapped. So I'm just going with 1024 with this, kind of a standard for at least my work. But if you want a higher resolution, you can go to 1536. So we've saved that as a 1024. Now we're back in Gmax, and we're going to create a material so we can bring that in. So we got the material editor open. We're going to the diffuse channel and hit this button right here. Double click bitmap, and then we're going up to pick up this MD3V here and go to the UVW and pick up this bitmap. There it is. So we'll pull that in, and since we're selected here on this, we can go ahead and apply it. And we need to hit this blue and white button to get it to display, and there it is. So there we have our VC panel and planar ready to receive gauges over in FlightSim. Now, in order to do that, obviously we have to set up the panel config and what have you, and that's what we're going to do. And I think I'll reserve that for the next video so I can talk a bit about setting up the panel config, and then we're going to try to go to FS Panel Studio, kind of move some gauges onto that panel, save it, show you the effect on the panel config, and then we'll fire up the sim and look at the gauges in the sim just to show you that all this works. Alrighty, so that wraps up how to create displayable gauges in your virtual cockpit. Now, keep in mind this cockpit is a separate scene right now, and we're going to have to merge that back to our primary scene, which is the exterior model, and we'll merge this full cockpit into the exterior model. Oops, let's unhide all here. So we're going to merge this whole cockpit and all of its parts, everything in this scene, back to the original exterior model we built, and then we're going to check everything out, make sure everything fits the way it should, and everything looks good. We're going to clone the exterior model to an interior model, and we're going to export that then to FlightSim so you can see this panel. And then, of course, there won't be gauges on it yet, unless I decide to do that just to show you where I'm going to put gauges. Then we go to FS Panel Studio and show you how I got there. Well, we'll figure that out before I do the next video anyhow. But I hope this has been helpful, and let me just put this up on the video. I kind of did this so maybe you guys would want to do a screenshot of this, but this is the basic steps for preparing your panel to receive gauges in FlightSim. So these are the steps we went through. Clone the face polys of the panel, give it a name, call it VCO1, link VCO1 to its mother panel, vcpanel, reset the pivot, center it, align it, move the planar off the surface of its mother panel by 0.002 of a meter, map it to a square UVW, and save that as 1024. We exported it to Lithunwrap. We created and saved the map and called it $VCO1. That $sign has got to be there or it's not going to work. In Gmax, and we created a new material and we added $VCO1 bitmap and we applied it to the VC, and boom, we're done. So now that you have that in front of you, you can screenshot that and preserve it if you want. You don't have to come back here to the video. Alrighty, so hopefully this has been enlightening if you've never created a VC panel before. And because this is a fighter and a lot of small aircraft usually I have the active panel with gauge functioning gauges and all the animated parts working in the exterior model too, because of an open cockpit or because of a glass cockpit. It just adds more realism. So that's the way this one will be as well. So all this will function in the exterior model as well as the interior model. All right, enough for that, and hope you got a bunch out of it, and I'll check back with you on the next video. Thanks, guys, and have a good day.